fish. The fish had 32 hooks in his mouth that were all broken off. That guys had hooked this fish 32 times, and this fish got away 32 times. Hi, I'm Captain Archie Jost. I fished on Swords, Life on the Line on Discovery Channel. You name it, I've caught it. Back in the mid-90s, the Canadians really weren't that good at catching giant tuna fish, so there was a period of time there in the fall, we were on quotas here in America, where they wanted a few of American fishermen that really knew how to catch them, and we had our own ways to do it. We took our own rods and reels and we put them in the truck and we went up there, and our plan was to teach the Canadians how to catch them so they could close their quota so the Japanese wouldn't get their quota. And they didn't know how to catch them. They would hook them, but they would break them off. They couldn't land them. And these fish up there, I didn't realize it when I was going up there, because our average fish back in those days was 600, 700, 800 pounds. Their average fish was anywhere from 900 to 1,500 pounds. They're huge. The world record of 1,400 and something, 1,500 and something is held up in the Bay of Canso Causeway. It was caught right in the causeway many years ago. But it was an experience of a lifetime to go up there and actually teach these guys how to catch these giant fish. The biggest one I got when I was up there was 1,276 pounds. It was a big fish. And it was sort of a unique place, Port Hood. I mean, it's like the Cape Breton Island, northeast of Nova Scotia. And that island is like going back in days it's like going to Scotland. You're like in a different country there. But you actually giant tuna fish for these fish right in close, within a mile of the beach. We didn't know anybody. We didn't know. We just went. I was assigned to. I went on with a boat with a nice guy from Prince Edward Island, and he was a crab fisherman. And we went out. We lost 3 fish immediately. And I was like, we got to make some adjustments here. I didn't realize these fish were that big. And then I saw 3 of them jump out of the water right next to them. They were all 1,200 pounds. And I was like, they don't even know they're that big. They think they're little fish. It's incredible. So I then said, we have to change our main line on this. We're using these spreader bars, which are 17 feet long. And I was using 400-pound main line on them. But then I realized when you hook this fish, he would take it backwards at 40, 50 miles an hour and turn everything inside out. The main line wasn't strong enough and it would break. So we went to 600-pound main line. And then I made up on the spreader bar, a 30-pound test, little breakaway. So the spreader bar would break away. And now you're fighting a fish on 600-pound main line. Then we started catching fish. We caught enough fish that the next year, I fished with him for 3 years. Well, we caught enough fish that the next year he bought a new boat and he put his old engine in the new boat. The next year after that, he added onto his house. And the next year after that, he bought a swimming pool. And he did very, very well. And the fact was, back in those days, when you caught a giant tuna fish that was 1,000 pounds, it was worth $25,000. And our deal was we would split it 50-50 with the Canadian. And it worked out very well for both of us. He wasn't catching any fish, and now we were. And I'll tell you something that was really eye-opening to me. They had this commercial tuna tournament there one day, and this one fish came in. It was over 1,500 pounds, and they put it up on this block. I walked over to look at the fish. The fish had 32 hooks in his mouth that were all broken off. That guys had hooked this fish 32 times, and this fish got away 32 times. It was sort of like looking at the kids today that have the rings on. It was something I'll never forget. And when you tell people about it, it's hard for them to believe that this fish kept eating with all these hooks in his mouth. They don't care. They call them the pigs of the ocean. I love this picture because this is my youngest son, Jeff. He doesn't fish with us that much, but we had this plane. It was a Cessna 172, 8835 Zulu. And I used to spot giant tuna fish for a lot of the harpoon boats down off of Cape Cod, off of Montauk. When they fished there in the spring, I would do spotting. I did a lot of flying back in the days when I was younger. And Jeff was a pilot, and he used to fly the plane, doing a lot of spotting and stuff with me as well. I've got a lot of good stories with the plane. The plane, we had the 172, and I also had a Cherokee 6 that I used to use for traveling and for business and stuff like that. But the 172 was really for spotting fish, and it was just a fun airplane. And I used to go out of Montauk. A lot of the Cape Cod fishermen would come to Montauk in June, but their pilots never usually came with them. So they would always be looking for a pilot. So I ended up being a harpoon boat pilot for a lot of these guys from Cape Cod. And I eventually had my own harpoon boat. It was a 46 Jarvis Newman with a long pulpit on it. And I think we could get these fish because the fish were worth a lot of money back in those days. Spot the fish and put the guy on the fish. And some of these harpooners were so good. Once they saw where the fish were, you could go to the next boat, find another school of fish for them. And what would happen is my neatest story to do with that was actually with my own boat. It was called the Midnight Express. And it was that 46 Jarvis Newman. It was a hot day in August, and we were giant tuna fishing. I was flying for the boat, and my two guys that are on the boat are sitting up on the front deck, on the main front cabin deck, and unbeknownst to me, they're smoking pot. So I'm in the plane. I'm at 1,100 feet. I'm circling. It's very quiet. I went in, I get gas, I come back out, I'm circling. They're still sitting on the bow of the boat smoking pot. I have to find the fish and then put them on them. So I have them move to, So I spot this fish, this school of fish. It was 9 fish. And they were the biggest, fattest, they all had to be 1,000-pounders, the biggest, fattest fish I ever saw in my life. They couldn't even swim. They were so fat, they wiggled. I mean, it's sort of crazy to look down and see this. I'm at 1,100 feet. These two guys, I told them, you're on fish, you got fish, 1/4 mile off your bow. I start them going. I said, you're at 3 boats, you're at 2 boats, you're at 1 boat. And he's up on the pulpit with the harpoon. He's right on these fish. He throws a harpoon, he misses. They go down, he come back up again. You got another shot, throws a harpoon, he misses. Me, I'm yelling out the window of the plane. I was at 1,100. At this point, I'm all the way down to 400 feet, and I'm screaming out the window. What the hell are you doing? How could you miss a fish that big? Well, I didn't know they were both so stoned that they couldn't even throw the harpoon. Then I realized what they were doing, and I said, take that boat, head back to Gloucester. I'm going to land in the airport. I'll be there. I was complete. I almost wanted to crash the plane out right into the boat and yell at these guys. I was screaming out the window, because here you are, wait all day to get fish like that, and then this happens. Well, that's an experience. Anyway, they took the true story. I get a lot of questions of what's it like being out there for days on end, what's it like being on a boat for 2 weeks or 3 weeks on a commercial swordfish boat, You make the best of it. You work hard. You work 20 hours a day, If you get 4 or 5 hours sleep, that's a lot. A lot of people ask me all the time, what's Linda like? She's a tough little captain, I'll tell you what. You don't want to screw with her. She knows what she's doing, and she's good. And she's a good fisherman, probably one of the best in the world. Best on the planet, I would say. And she's good. But I get a lot of questions about what was it like to fish with Linda Greenlaw. And for me, it was a dream come true to fish with her. But I guess mostly people ask about what's it like to be in the big seas. What's it like to be in rough weather and things like that. And it's something that you sort of like get used to, I remember when we went out in the first year on the SeaHawk, we were going to be out there on the same day as the perfect storm and the same day that the boat went down. And a lot of people didn't realize it, but Alfred Perry, who was the Bohemian guy that was on that boat, I was fishing in Puerto Rico that winter before, and he was from the island of Martinique, and he came to Puerto Rico, and he fished with me in Puerto Rico, and I brought him back to the United States. So he was in Montauk with me in July of that year, and I remember him yelling out, Archie, Archie, I got a chance to fish on the Grand Banks on the Andrea Gale. Well, he wasn't really allowed to leave the boat, but he was told the story that he could go make $30,000 in one trip as a crew member on that boat because it was a high dollar boat. And he says, I got to go. He says, I want to go. Would you let me go? I said, go ahead. And matter of fact, when I had the only grainy picture of him that you see of him in any of the magazines today, it was either NBC or one of those companies sent a guy out to get that picture for me. But the picture that came from off the front of my boat during the blessing of the fleet that day. It was the only grainy picture of Alfred Perry that existed. And he was really a sharp guy. He actually wrote music for Bob Marley. But he was lost at that. And sometimes I say to myself, if I didn't let him go, maybe he'd still be alive today. But that was my experience with the Perfect Storm and Linda and the boat. So we did a wreath, and I had swordfish bills like I showed you inside. I put them on the wreath, and we had it with roses and stuff. We kept it in the fish hole the whole time. And on October 31st, on our way back, we put that wreath in the water as a memorial for the crew that was lost on the Andrea Gale. A lot of people don't know that story, but it's a really interesting, touching story. Actually, it shows us putting the wreath in if you watch that series of Sword's Life on a Line.